The Outsider or the Stranger is a novella written by French novelist Albert Camus. It is one of the most elaborated novel of Albert Camus. It was first written in 1940 and published in 1942. In 1946, the novel was first translated into English by the author Stuart Gilbert. The novel was translated 4 times into English and also in numerous other languages. It was twice adapted as a film.
Being a French, Albert Camus preferred to write The Outsider in French. The problem of translating Camus' first and most famous novel begins with the title A Stranger, which could be variously rendered as The Foreigner or The Stranger or The Outsider. These translations do have opposing nuances of meaning. The Foreigner suggests cultural difference. The Stranger suggests social isolation, and the Outsider suggests the personal behavior of an idiosyncratic person who acts in such a way as to be set apart from others. Thus, the appropriateness or the justification of the translation of the title and Mesault's role needs to be analyzed. Our main character, Mesault, is a French man living in French Algiers. In some senses, this makes him a foreigner to the land. But the text establishes that in fact his family has lived there for several generations. Viewed in this light, Mesault is no more a foreigner to French Algiers than third-generation Americans are foreigners in the US. More likely Mesault is a metaphorical foreigner. The previous analysis is based on the word foreigner, but the same thing applies to the title The Stranger. Mesault is a stranger among other people because he is totally isolated from other people mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and at the end of the novel physically. He's a stranger, or quite possibly he's the stranger. Matthew Ward, in his brilliant recreation of this masterpiece of the absurd, has chosen to call it The Stranger. Perhaps to emphasize the alienation of the principal character and narrator Mesault. Incidentally, Camus' first idea for the title was L'Indifferent, Mesault's detachment personified. It's easy to argue that he's to society, to common human customs he is an outsider. In his avant-propos, Camus recalls that he had previously described Mesault and his role in life as an outsider. Camus says that Mesault is man who refuses to play the game of Aeschylean phrase, sport, of God. Foreigner, the outsider, as it relates to a person's behavior and its results. WHCIH is what the novel is most about. How Mesault acts in an absurd world and the consequences of his actions. This in a world where the sun behaves absurdly while at one time being helpful and at another time being destructive. The fact is, we do not know much more about Mesault. Even, we do not know his first name throughout the novel. He is simply found Mesault. He is now living in Algiers, but previously he has lived in Paris. In fact, he has very little furniture and very few personal belongings. We see in him an indifference to material possessions unlike others. He discontinued his education and is now working as a clerk with a shipping company. Here his indifference and alienation from the rest of the world is noticeable. In the text, his physical appearance is never described. We assume he is a quite young, perhaps in his 30s. He does not like people with too white skin. Although most readers today, however, have become critical of the politics of racism in Musong, for he is white and his victim an Arab. Mother died today, or maybe yesterday, I can't be sure, Mesault reflects. Though the telegram from the home says, your mother passed away, funeral tomorrow, deep sympathy. Which leaves the matter doubtful. A son not knowing the time of his mother's death is rare, and he's obviously an outsider. That does not mean anything, is a phrase that crop up again and again in the text. For instance, When an authority becomes disgusted with Mesault because he hasn't shown enough sadness on the day of his mother's death, he thinks, I probably did love Maman, but that did not mean anything. Again, while he's making love to his girlfriend, he reflects, she asked me if I loved her. I told her that it did not mean anything. For Mesault, the usual hierarchy of perception has been replaced by raw unorganized sensations of his own self. As for example, he tells the court that he murdered a man because the sun had confused him. Thus, his lack of conventional hypocrisy enrages everyone around him. Camus once said of the outsider, if a man dares to say what he truly feels, if he revolts against having to lie, then society will destroy him in the end. With this said, so as to give a deeper perspective into Mesault as a character and Camus as a novelist, we'll examine Mesault as a stranger. However, it is difficult to argue that he is a stranger to himself since he is so keenly aware of every sensation he has and so bitterly honest, direct about his desires and intentions and emotional feelings. When the attorney asked him a last question, he reflects, did I regret what I had done? After thinking a bit, I said that what I felt was less regret than a kind of vexation. I could not find a better word for it. Here, feminism has made us notice that the root of Mesault's crime is not sunstroke but the violence towards a woman. The Arab is seeking vengeance for his sister, whom Mesault's male neighbor has brutalized. Yet, it may be said he is a stranger to himself, if one takes the position that morality and emotional empathy are innate qualities. Something author Willem Golding contests. Thus, he is a stranger to himself because he is isolated from his social obligations and moral duties, as was demonstrated at the vigil for his mother. In the 1950s, it seemed a universal and timeless tale with philosophical overtness. The hero meant to be a sort of everyman, and the novel was intended as a classic statement of the absurd. Camus, an Algerian of French origin, certainly sympathized with Arab population, but he did not live to see the bloody Algerian war for independence as Mesault. So Mesault is a autobiographical character. The critic Germain Brie had said of Mesault that he was a man with a narrow perspective, with limited spiritual capacity. While Camus says that he does not see Mesault as a social derelict as some readers do. Camus points out the philosophical significance of Mesault. As Ian said, if you exist. The stranger dramatized the issues at the heart of existentialists. The same issues are probably at the heart of life, whether or not you believe in a god. The study shows that Mesault is condemned for what he is and for what he believes. He accepts to die for the truth but without any false heroes. He had no illusions about his forthcoming execution and is terrified of the dawn when they will come for him. However, he is also an outsider in a sense that involves us all. As to same extent we are all outsider in an alien world.